What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. We had a fantastic round of rugby for the first round of the warm-up games for the World Cup. Now, I know a lot of people, they're bashing out all the review videos for all the different games. Now, as a lot of you may know, have been subscribed for a long time. Of course, YouTube is not my full-time job. It is a part-time hobby. I don't have as much time as some of the other guys on YouTube to sit down and do a long review video for every single game that was on the weekend. So I thought what might be more fun to do is, rather than do one long video for each game, is instead do one long video that's made up of little short reviews for every game over the weekend. And that way, you guys who missed out some of the games can get a bit of news about the matches that were on. And those of you who saw the games and just wanted to know my opinion can get some sort of short form reviews and my own thoughts on it. And we have a bit of best of both worlds. If you enjoy this style, and it might be something we bring into the World Cup as well, make sure to drop this video a like. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Help support the smaller content creators on YouTube who enjoy talking a little bit about rugby. Now, elephant in the room, or crocodile in the room. Yes, there is a crocodile behind me. I've just got back from the fair with my girlfriend and we won a giant crocodile and I don't know where to put it. So currently it's in the back of shot. It's on the spare bed and it's going to be there. If you want to give it a name or whatever, you drop it down in the comments. Who knows? We can maybe make that into a bit of fun for the channel. So first game of the weekend, New Zealand versus Wallabies. Bledisloe 2. New Zealand being able to take this win, but took a bit of time to get there. Australia with a much better performance in this one, taking the lead at halftime, 17 points to 3. Not a lot of people saw that coming. I had to miss this one. It was on at like 3 a.m. and I didn't get to see the game live at all. But I have gone back. I watched the first half and I caught the highlights for the second half. And Australia vastly improved. Really aggressive, all-out attack, making the most of having their hands on the ball, going through the phases, getting those little pieces that they've had wrong for so many weeks in the past. Now they are getting those things to click together and had a much better attack. Betty getting over for a try in the first 5 minutes. Tom Hooper, who's gone from being subbed off in the first 30 minutes of his debut to now powering through New Zealand players to score a try. Absolutely fantastic from Australia. Carter Gordon had a much better game at 10 in that opening half, and going in the lead at 17 points to 3 is a really big bonus to Australia. Now in the second half, New Zealand came back. It's New Zealand. They'll always find that extra step up in gear. A couple of the subs coming on for New Zealand making a massive impact to that game. Of course, the New Zealand team was a big shift from the New Zealand team we got to see last week, but that impressive impact from the bench really helped them step up. A couple of players doing really well. Sean Stevenson getting a try on his debut. Really nice to see him. I still maintain I would have liked to see him play fullback rather than the wing for the entirety of that game, but he was making a bit of a nuisance of himself for the defensive side of Australia. Finau also getting over for his try, so really nice to see. I'm not sure if, he's probably earned himself that starting shirt for the All Blacks, but a nice performance from him. One of the big takeaways from New Zealand for me was just how much Richie Mo'unga seems to affect a game compared to Damian McKenzie. I do like Damian McKenzie, but I think for me, Richie Mo'unga has landed himself that 10 shirt. He's the 10 that should be going into that World Cup in that starting shirt. Maybe McKenzie's going to be sitting on the bench. Maybe the replacement fullback / fly half can come on. Maybe he'll be played as a bit of a super sub, but Richie Mo'unga really making a big impact in this one. Australia in the second half, though, really not going their way. As we've sort of seen in other games, the drop off, the ability to actually just get over that try line consistently and get points on the board, a real issue for them. They went in 17-3 up at halftime. They lost the game 23 points to 20. They only scored 3 points in that second half from what was such an aggressive, high-scoring first half for them. They'll be really disappointed. I saw a press conference afterwards with Eddie Jones sat there talking, and he was like, you know what? It's all positive. We've got loads of stuff to take away from this game. It's all amazing. It's every loss on the bounce now since Eddie Jones has taken over. I still think there's some big improvements, and I think leading towards that World Cup, Australia certainly have individual players that are going to be able to land a good game and play extremely well. I'm not sure if this team is necessarily where it wants to be so close to the World Cup. The second game of the weekend, Scotland versus France. This one was posed a bit more as like Scotland A versus France B. You wouldn't have guessed that from the first half. A lot of people still had a lot of faith in France. I mean, I looked at the community polls that we had for the channel. 42% predicted Scotland to win. 58% predicted France, even with that more B team coming into this game. And France, you would have to believe, in that first half. You wouldn't have thought it was the AB, you thought it would be the other way around. To be honest, not a lot of positives for Scotland to take away from that first half. France absolutely dominating this game, scoring 3 tries in that opening half. 2 of the 3 tries being conjured up by 2 newbies to the France team, both 20-year-olds, both youngsters making their first cap in the game. What an impression they made. Guyton coming in alongside of Bieri. Hopefully I'm going to get those pronunciations correct. I'm sure they saw my preview video and they said, Mad Dragon struggles with name pronunciations. We better have really good games and have long careers with France, just to try and make his life a bit more difficult when filming videos. But both of them had a fantastic opening half, and Bieri getting over for his try. What a rapid player. He's going to be one to watch out for as this France team develops. Of course, they have some fantastic starting wingers in France. It's a tough shirt to get into, but he's still a young lad. I can absolutely see him progressing towards a long career in France. So France going in at halftime, 21 points to 3. France scoring as many tries as Scotland did points. That's not what you want to be seeing from a Scotland team at home versus a B team France. There had to be a really big shift up in this game. I did make some notes for myself at halftime just to cover how many areas of the game France were actually winning. So they were winning the overall attack battle. Absolutely, they were looking fantastic out in attack, really messing about with spreading that ball wide. They were winning the lineouts. They won the kicking battle. They had the most possession and the most territory. They just dominated every area of that first half. I had almost no positives for Scotland to even take away from this one. But the halftime team talk really coming in from Scotland. What an impressive turnaround from them. An enormous shift up in mentality, in the eagerness to get into the game. Darcy Graham getting his try in the first 5 minutes of that opening half. I did go to the TMO to have a look at it. I was happy with that one being a try. I did think it had very similar talking points as the Reece Zammit try that happened in the Wales-England game that got disallowed. I feel like it was an almost identical try with the way the ball was leaving the hand and what have you, but luckily Darcy Graham getting awarded his. But just the aggressive and composed nature of the Scotland attack just meant that the second half was just going all Scotland's way. They did decide to make it a bit harder on themselves. Xander Fagerson decided to recreate his hit on Wyn Jones from a few years back in this one and get himself another red card. So at the time of filming this, we're still waiting to see how many games he's going to end up missing towards the World Cup because of that red card. But 30 minutes of this game played with 14 men for Scotland did not look undeterred. They didn't even let it bother them. A lot of teams, when you go down a man, it's about game management. Scotland didn't really go for it. They just went, say, let's just attack more. Let's just be on the offensive and go forwards. Schoeman and Cherry getting over the line for their tries. Blair Kinghorn having his disallowed, which was a real shame. I thought he had a really nice run for his try as well. The boot of Finn Russell also coming in, absolutely necessary in this game. Getting those kicks towards the post, but also just the general kicking battle around the field. Really, really good from him. And just being able to dominate possession. You still got 14 men, not kicking the ball away as much, holding on to it. And it had portions of that game in the second half. 90% possession over the course of that second half at different times. You know, absolutely fantastic from them, holding on to the ball, making the most of the attack. France could have arguably taken it at the end. They did have some penalties right at the end, which they chose to go for a scrum, which I have to say was probably the one area of the game I wasn't that impressed by for France overall in this one. I really thought they should have gone to the corner and gone for the driving maul. They decided not to, went for the scrum, generated another penalty, then they swapped. Then they went to the corner. I don't know why they would suddenly change, but the Scotland defence holding out really well and managing to seal out this game. A couple of fantastic performances for Scotland. Blair Kinghorn having a fantastic performance in this one as well, getting his man of the match. I've said before, I do prefer him at fullback to playing in that number 10 shirt or occasionally when they chuck him on the wing. I like him in that fullback and thought he had a really nice game, and he might have just secured himself that 15 shirt for Scotland leading towards the World Cup. One of the big questions for Scotland, though, will be, can this be an 80-minute performance? The second half was so much better from them, a drastic improvement, and looked like a really top-tier Scotland side performing in that second half. But they needed to have that big comeback, and against a B team, France, absolutely something that can be done. You can take control of the game. You're up against a couple of youngsters on their side. You can just shift that momentum of the game and take control. But coming up against teams in the World Cup like Ireland and the Springboks, I'm not sure they're going to give you that opportunity to bounce back in that second half and come back. You need to be able to land that 80-minute performance. So looking towards the World Cup, just being able to prolong that second half performance for the full game is what I'm really looking for. France, though, looking dangerous in attack. I'm really loving that sort sort of conveyor belt system attack they're doing with the forwards now. Having one forward carry the ball, two extra forwards, clear out the ruck, recycle quickly, next forward and driving through. We've seen it a bit in the Six Nations. France love going through the forwards and moving that attack line up. They did it against Scotland, so it's nice to see some of the youngsters coming through from France. Not only do they have an A team that can compete at high level, but a B team that can also step in, and even new debutants coming through, looking maybe towards the next World Cup that could become some really serious contenders. Third game of the weekend then, Wales-England, the only one that I predicted wrong. This was quite surprising to me. If you followed the Super Brew, I did all my picks. This was the only game of the weekend that I actually predicted wrong. England will be bitterly disappointed with this performance, I think. Wales taking this one 20 points to 9, and it was very much a Warren Gatland Wales side, right? We've seen this in the past. The slow style of play, one or two phases, then you just box kick it back down, you absorb a bunch of attack, and then you play one or two phases and you kick it away again. It's something that Warren Gatland has always loved, those games that are really just tight all the way up till the end. And then the final 20 minutes, Wales begin to explode, and this one was absolutely no different. Not a lot of really big positives to take away from Wales in the first half, though. England with most of the attack, most of the aggression, but their own attack getting ruined by themselves, which was kind of wild. The amount of handling errors from, a good England team was very, very surprising. Very poor communication between players, out of position or just having poor handling, playing very deep at times, having players really having to run onto the ball, along with some knock-ons, just ruining any sense of attack. Nothing really working for them at all. It was a battle of the boot, trying to have those 3 points go over. Marcus Smith taking England to a 9 points to 6 lead at half-time, but leaving England with a lot of issues to deal with. The scrummaging generally in the game also wasn't very good. Now on Wales' side, they lost the starting hooker within the first 5 minutes, and they had 2 debutant props. And you had quite an established England front row. I mean, you want to be seeing that scrummaging team working extremely hard to try and drive that one back, and just didn't really. The scrummaging was pretty messy all day long. In the second half, though, Wales, sort of similar to Scotland, absolutely stepping up, mixing up the style of gameplay, which was really nice. They absorbed all the attack in that first half without conceding a try, trying to conserve energy. And you have to say, at the end of that first half, England forwards looked like they were really sort of puffing out a lot of air. Wales actually looked pretty good. The fitness training camps that they've spoken about before in Wales, training schemes that are sometimes much harsher than many other teams in World Rugby, it leads to many more injuries for the Wales players, but the fitness level for Wales actually looking really good and came into its own in the second half, mixing up the game style. The type of kicking changed, removing quite as many box kicks and instead looking for some cheeky kick over the tops. There was Costello cross-field kicking across, grubber kicks through, and really causing a bit of a nuisance for England. It really led to a number of the tries. Gareth Davis getting his try, which was off the back of a cross-field kick with a bit of shot to nothing from Costello. Aaron Wainwright doing fantastically on that wing alongside of Jack Morgan. Getting that offload to Gareth Davis is always going to be on your shoulder. Running that one over for a try. Really nice score from them. And then the second one, really the attack initiating again from a grubber kick from Dan Biggar, putting the ball behind the line, putting England into all sorts of disarray, and then Wales just pinning England back against their own 5-metre line, shifting it out, and George North finishing it over. Another player who had a really good game today. Not a lot of people were talking about George North's defence. The scramble defence from Wales, there was occasions where the defence opened up. Scramble defence, really positive. They really shut down the England attack on the scramble. George North leading from the front, shutting down 2, I would say, definite try-scoring opportunities, but George North absolutely stopping them himself. And at the end of this game, Wales getting over for a 20-9 win. And you have to say, quite a few positives for Wales to take away. A couple of Wales players sticking their hands up. Aaron Wainwright played very well. Jack Morgan, I think, has landed that 7 shirt. Like I've already mentioned, George North playing well. Costello, who I was a bit hesitant about how he was going to get on into this international game, actually I thought had a really nice game. For England, a lot of big questions. This was by far, I would say on paper, probably a better England team than the Wales team. But overall, the performance certainly didn't look it. The lineouts were going very wrong for them. Really not having that platform to launch from that they've been so used to for a number of years, having a solid lineout platform. Handling errors galore. 15 handling errors by the end of the game for England is just far too many at any tier 1 level rugby. And at the end of this game, England not even able to score a single try, which is, fantastic fantastic for the Wales defence to put that one up onto themselves. But also, the England attack not really looking like anyone was getting through. Marchant was probably one of the only players who looked like at any point he could probably have carved through the defensive line. Everyone else was just sort of running into red walls and hoping they were going to smash through. Marchant, for me, was the only real one that looked like a dangerous threat. Singer out on the wing, I thought didn't really perform very well in defence. I don't think he was doing very well. Wales obviously identified he's absolutely not the man you want to be having in the air. They specifically targeted kicks away from the fullback and aimed directly for him. They had players like Lee Halfpenny or Zammit, someone going to get in the air. Singer just not winning any of those aerial battles at all. I thought Jamie Blumeyer was struggling in that hooker position and the replacement hooker that came on making his debut as well. I didn't think it was really working out for them. So a lot of big questions for England. A couple of players that did do pretty well. Marchant, I thought, good on attack. And Lewis Ludlam, who a time and again seems to be a bit of a shining standout star for this England team. Every game I see him, and I think he actually has a really quite good game, even when the rest of the team around him is not really gelling well together. So they'll go back to the drawing board and try and work on something for Twickenham. For Wales, a much better second half, but such a slow first half. It's the way Warren Gatland likes to play the game. I'm wondering whether, though, that's going to work against some of the bigger teams. Luckily, Australia at the minute are not necessarily firing on all cylinders and seem to be dropping off in that second half, which is when Wales are beginning to exploit it. But as you look further ahead towards the quarterfinals, maybe a semi-finals in the World Cup, when you come up against a New Zealand, a South Africa, an Ireland team, those teams are not really the teams that sort of eventually let up on the attack. They probably won't be making 15 handling errors in a game. And you can't always rely on having a Thomas Williams and Dan Biggar partnership to shift up the game in that second half. They're going to have to be able to stick that performance out for the full 80, and you can't just sit there and absorb points and wait for the other team to get tired. So for them, looking ahead to next week, I'm really hoping we get to see a more full performance across the game rather than just in that second half when they finally get to explode. And the final game for today's video, Ireland versus Italy. Now, I know there was also a Springboks Argentina game on. I didn't realise they were on at the same time as this game. I thought the game was on much later, and unfortunately, I have no ability over here in the UK to go back and rewatch the game, so I'm still looking for a way to try and find the South Africa versus Argentina game somewhere else. That might end up being a separate video. If it's not done in time, I'll have to try and just add some comments in for the next preview video for both those teams when the next game comes around. But on to Ireland versus Italy. This one panned out to be very different in terms of the style of play than I was expecting going into it. The Ireland team sheet, a bit more 50-50, some high cap players mixed in with some new players to give them some time on the pitch. The Italy team looking pretty loaded up and a pretty good starting Italian team. I was thinking this game was going to be an experimental game for Ireland. They were going to test out some new players against a pretty formidable Italian team. They were going to probably give them some time on the pitch, and they were going to work on a bunch of new tactics and new sort of ways they were going to look to play as they move ahead towards the World Cup and maybe thinking future along. That wasn't how Ireland played this one at all. They looked at this game very much as a World Cup warm-up. It might have been the best managed game, if that makes sense. So I'll talk a bit more about what I mean. The way they utilised the players, I thought they were going to let them play their own game and see how it worked. It really didn't pan out that way. They ended up using the players to have game time, and it almost felt like you could hear Andy Farrell looking for his coaching selections. Who's impressing, who's not. The players sometimes given half a game to play. Some of them had a little bit longer. It seemed like everyone was getting time on the pitch. But there was really no new style Ireland to this game. This was Ireland being Ireland. They went through the forwards. They had a very good scrum. The Moors looking strong. They were just going through the forwards. They were recycling the ball super fast, crashing the ball up through the forwards, making as many meters as possible, getting over some driving maul tries, some pick and go tries, and then occasionally you chuck it out to the winger. This time it was Stockdale as opposed to James Lowe, and he let them run round and make a bunch of meters and really try and push you up the field. It felt like an Ireland team playing Ireland, which is not what I expected, which might sound ridiculous, but I really thought it'd be a testing game for a bunch of different things. This game at the end of it actually came across to me as Ireland are looking for which players best fit their own play style, and they're going to be able to remove current players and fit new ones in like Lego pieces, and they'll just carry on going. Rather than thinking about new styles or a B team, it's just one team working one way, and we're going to be able to interchange players, and I think it's been managed very well as we get towards this World Cup. Ireland were absolutely brutal in this game in the breakdown. We know that Ireland don't like to have other teams having a lot of time on the ball. They got in, jackal penalties, turnovers, an absolute nuisance at the breakdown zone, but also on their own ball. The speed that they were just crashing over, getting the ruck over and allowing the ball to come out. Craig Casey wanting to play at extreme speed. The scrum half shirt's a very competitive shirt for Ireland with so many other good players. Craig Casey, I thought, had a really nice game trying to get the team going fast, getting the ball out wide quickly to the other forwards just to allow them to make more meters, find the room in that Italian defensive line, and then shipping it out even wider out to the wings, allowing them to make a massive amount of meters. By the end of that first half, Ireland had over 500 meters made in that first half, which is just exceptional. Just goes to show how fast and how much pressure they're going to put on other teams, and I think it's probably the right way to do it. Going up against teams like Scotland and South Africa in that pool stage, you're going to need to be able to apply the pressure to the other team, and loading up on the forwards and being the physical team, bringing your intention might absolutely be the right way to go about that. Ireland also dominating territory and possession in that opening half. The power of the forwards was absolutely shown off. All 3 tries in that opening half coming from just sheer force and power and using the forwards to get over the try line, really laying down what they wanted to bring to this game. Not being helped by Fischetti getting his yellow card, dropping Italy down a forward, just leads to a driving maul try, which Keelan Doris actually scored. No longer is he just a world-class number 8, he's also a world-class number 6, and we've now learned he's also a world-class number 7 as well in the world of rugby, scoring 2 tries in this one. Fantastic performance yet again from him. I don't think I've ever seen Keelan Doris have a bad game. This allowed Ireland to go in 21 points to 3 at half-time, and there really wasn't a lot of positives for Italy to take away from that one. Their opening 5 minutes was absolutely fine in terms of the attack. They earned the penalty, they took the 3, but after that, Ireland put them under so much pressure, it really didn't feel like Italy had any answers for them at the end of that first half. Ireland made changes at half-time, bringing on Frawley and Blade in order to give them some game time as well. Like I've already said, Craig Casey I thought had a really nice game, but Crowley in that number 10 shirt thought he played really well. They kept on all game. They had Crowley and Frawley playing with each other to sort of have a double playmaker style. But Crowley I thought had a fantastic game. There was a lot of pressure on him for this one to try and lead this team, and I thought he would look very, very composed. And with the age of Sexton and how many injuries he does have, looking towards that World Cup, you've got to be able to have a good number 2 stepping up in that number 10 shirt, and I thought Crowley absolutely had a fantastic performance this one. But again, good management just generally from this Ireland team in order to allow other players to have time on the pitch, allow them to show what you're going to bring, and allow you to make the most informed choice as you lead towards the World Cup. There were still some other issues for Ireland though. The line-out situation on occasion was going a bit wrong for them, throws not going exactly where they wanted them to, and the general maul setup from the back of the line-out, obviously something they really wanted to practice against quite a physical team like Italy, didn't really land for them every time. We saw Ian Henderson, a very experienced player, landing one and then dropping the ball out the back. A couple of other mauls got completely ruined by the fact that players in the line-out running around and creating an obstruction before the maul was even formed. They probably lost 4 or 5 opportunities for more tries in this game through the forwards just by their own sort of small errors and stuff. So there are still things they'll want to work on before they get to that World Cup. Italy, on the other hand, they'll be happy by the end of the game in terms of their performance. It took a long time to really get going. The Italian backs looking much better towards that second half. They actually got more composed. The attack looked more organised. In the first half, it looked very out of shape and they didn't really know what they were doing. In the second half, they really began to set themselves up and work better. They like their set plays over in Italy. And when they're playing the set play, they look really good. It looks like a really high-end team actually playing really well. It's when it begins to break down or a set play doesn't work out, from scrambling and readjusting to the new position, that's when it can sometimes go wrong for them. But a couple of the backs, Pani getting over for his try, and Menoncello, who had a really good game in this one, getting over for his try as well. So the backs for Italy can absolutely do some damage. We know what other players have to bring when Capuozzo's back in the team. Ioani's out on that wing can cause some issues. We didn't get to see a lot from Adogwu before he went off with his injury, but the backs for Italy can look dangerous if you give them time. And I think Ireland, by the end of that second half, will have been a bit annoyed with their overall performance in that second half. The score at halftime was 21 points to 3 to Ireland, and in that second half, the full-time score was 33 points to 17, meaning that Ireland scored 12 and Italy scored 14 in that second half. And that's both down to positives for Italy and a couple of negatives for Ireland in terms of, like I've already mentioned, about that line-out situation and the driving maul not going as they would have wanted. And then finally, just a bit of injury news for Italy with Menoncello. After having such a good performance, looked like he damaged his shoulder. I'm not sure if he actually dislocated his shoulder, but he certainly took a big hit in one of the tackles and his shoulder didn't look particularly good. So hopefully he manages to get back in time for the World Cup, because Italy desperately need to have some really solid backs. There we have it, guys. That is going to be the warm-up roundup. Like I said in the start of the video, if you enjoy this one, remember to drop it a like and let me know if you think this could be a style of video you'd enjoy seeing more as we get towards the World Cup. It's just really tricky for someone like me who just does this part-time for fun to sit down and make a big review video for every individual game and have them uploaded super quick. Doing this is actually a much easier system for me, so let me know what you did think of it, because it really does help me out. I'll see you all next time, guys. Bye-bye.